In July of 2023, Baldur's Gate 3 was hardly a blip on most people's radar. When it was released 1 month later, it became many people's Game of the Year, if not the generation.
And the Game of the Year is Baldur's Gate 3.
Now, the game has celebrated its 1-year anniversary. Its 7th major patch added official modding support and new endings to the game. And developer Larian Studios launched a brand new YouTube channel to provide behind the scenes looks at the game and its developers. Between its critical acclaim, numerous awards, and financial success, Baldur's Gate 3 is worth celebrating. But its meteoric rise to success was just as surprising to the developers at Larian as it was to the rest of the gaming community. Game director Sven Vinke thought at every single point the game's success was going to stop. I remember arguing with our director of publishing, who said, "This is going to sell a lot." I said, "That's impossible. The number you're saying is just not possible." Despite months of patches and media attention on Baldur's Gate 3, Larian is already hard at work on its next project, and while we don't know exactly what that is, we know it isn't Baldur's Gate 4. In March, Vinke announced the studio's plans to end its partnership with Wizards of the Coast, meaning Larian won't be making DLC or a sequel to their critical success. Several months after this announcement, Vinke says the folks at Larian have no regrets about the decision. "We actually decided this only at Christmas. We were working on stuff, but our hearts weren't as much in it, probably because we spent so much time already in it. So it was time for us to do new things, and ever since, we felt better. We got our developer joy back, and that's the prime thing, right? If you don't have that, you can't make anything good." It's only natural that after spending 6 years working on the game, Larian isn't as enthusiastic about Baldur's Gate 3 as it once was. But back in 2017, that exact enthusiasm was what led Vinke to pursue the project to begin with. The original Baldur's Gate games are hailed as BioWare classics from the late 90s and early 2000s, and after decades without a new entry, Larian saw itself as a developer fit to continue the legacy. Wizards of the Coast, which owns the Baldur's Gate IP, agreed to a pitch meeting, but the presentation's date was, ironically, set for the same day as the release date for Larian's then upcoming title, Divinity Original Sin 2. According to Vinke, the time crunch led to a subpar presentation. That was the best that we could do. Wizards of the Coast said, "This is not very good." We said, "We know, give us more time." And then they gave us more time. Thankfully, the following presentation went much better, and the studio was given the green light. So, after shipping the definitive edition of Divinity Original Sin 2, Larian focused all of its efforts on making Baldur's Gate 3. The game entered early access in 2020. Just like with Divinity Original Sin 2, the early access model allowed Larian to refine the gameplay experience with player feedback. But Vinke is unsure whether Larian will follow the same procedure for future games. "I think it has a tremendous amount of benefits, but every game has its own structure, its own language, so I think you need to judge that game by game." In this case, players had plenty of feedback for Baldur's Gate 3, and Larian had to course correct on quite a few things. In addition to a generally buggy launch, a complaint that would be levied against the game even months after its 1.0 release, fundamental pieces of the story and mechanics were completely reworked. There were complaints about the past tense framing of the game's opening sequence, struggles with implementing the Dungeons & Dragons rule set, and general comments that it was too similar to their previous game. But the early access model ended up working quite well, helping Larian to figure out how people wanted to play Baldur's Gate 3. For the following 3 years, Larian would constantly update and expand the content in their early access release, in addition to developing the latter 2 acts of the game. These updates often included adjustments to dialogue and story, which meant actors and voiceover artists frequently returned to the recording studio.
"Grief tore through their home like a thief. Do you understand?"
Vinke and the rest of the writing team changed the script continuously, fine-tuning the plot, making everything flow more naturally, and adding more instances where the game could react to player behaviour. Of course, no one is more impacted by script rewrites than the actors themselves. Devora Wild, the actress who portrays Lae'zel, remembers being glad for the extra work. "I felt very lucky in the beginning to, as an actor, have a job for such a long period of time. I was like, oh my god, I'm gonna have a job for 2 years. Due to delays in development, those 2 years would stretch to 4, meaning Wild spent a considerable amount of time in Lae'zel's virtual shoes, and a considerable amount of time with a recurring gig."
You've a sharp tongue, elf. Would that your mind proved its equal.
Baldur's Gate 3 finally launched on August the 3rd, 2023, but Wild didn't feel the full impact the game would have for a few weeks.
Shit, never mind.
Need to learn the hard way.
Yeah, he does need to learn the hard way. Get him! There we go.
Between her TikTok posts and a video of the cast reading thirsty tweets,
Why would you want to get f***ed by a bear?
there was a considerable amount of online traction. But she didn't comprehend the physical size of the fanbase until MCM London Comic Con. Jennifer English, who plays Shadowheart in the game, felt the same way. I'd gone to London Comic Con when the game was in early access, and I remember being really quite honoured that I had 10 people in my queue. I think I'd made my rent that weekend, and I was like, wow, that's amazing. When she came back the following year, her lines had grown to 6-hour wait times, and the cast needed security detail to handle the number of people stopping them on the show floor. Part of this boom in popularity has to do with the actors and their willingness to promote themselves and the game on social media. Popular games are released all the time, but it's not common for the actors behind video game characters to be thrust into the spotlight.
Someone asked if you mocapped the jump, the twirl onto the ground.
I wish. I did not mocap the jump, no.
While it wasn't Larian's suggestion that the cast begin engaging with memes on social media, Wild shares that Larian's encouragement of the situation has a lot to do with their ultimate success.
OnlyFans. Coming soon. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Whatever that means.
Larian was just gracious enough and fun-loving enough to be like, you know what, we're just going to let them run with it. Many other companies don't allow actors to do that actually, and I think that Larian really embraces the spirit of let the actors just kind of get on with it. In addition to the influx of followers, English says that the online community's response to Shadowheart has made her more fond of the role. Despite initially not liking the character, she says, "The stuff that players like in Shadowheart is kind of the stuff I like about myself, and that fans have latched on to parts of the character that she hadn't even consciously portrayed."
I wanted to thank you again for freeing me.
Meanwhile, Wild was surprised Lizelle was so polarising at first, with many fans being turned away by her standoffish attitude.
The tadpole hasn't yet scrambled all your senses. Auspicious.
Though that attitude eventually softened. She says, "I was getting a lot of delayed responses. Even now where people are like, oh you know what, on my third playthrough I gave her a chance and now I love her." Alongside Aliona Baranova, one of Baldur's Gate 3's motion capture directors and English's girlfriend, the actors have cultivated a following that has become separate from the game altogether.
Hey, you lot! I'm going nowhere!
This includes a line of merch, with t-shirts referencing Wild's love of ranch dressing, and inside jokes suggesting the three of them are God's favourite throuple. The latter shirt references a meme of Shadowheart calling herself God's favourite princess, which English recreated per her girlfriend's suggestion. In fact, English credits her chronically online girlfriend Baranova for her social media successes, as English says it has never been something she has partaken in. Between her personal life, her professional life, and her self-image, Baldur's Gate 3 has had a profound impact on English. It does not feel like a year, and yet life has completely changed. English isn't alone in that feeling. Baldur's Gate 3 has had a tremendous effect on everyone at Larian. In the months following its release, it won Game of the Year at the Game Awards, the Golden Joystick Awards, the DICE Awards, the GDC Awards, and the BAFTAs.
Thank you so much.
Not to mention a slew of other awards for narrative and performance, including the second ever Hugo Award bestowed upon a video game. It has a staggering 96 on Metacritic, and has been hailed as one of the greatest role-playing games of all time.
Baldur's Gate 3 is just about everything I could have asked for.
In the face of this monumental impact, Larian's goals as a studio remain remarkably humble. Art director Joaquin Valimchek shared, "All of this success means there are high expectations of what's next. We are playing it cool as always, and we are not letting the success blind us to the amount of hard work it took to get here." Valimchek's fellow art director Elena Dobrovnia says, "In practice, not much has changed. We are still hard-working bees ready for new adventures. The quality bar was set high by BG3, so we are wrapping our heads around how to raise it even higher. The idea of raising a bar past Baldur's Gate 3 sounds absurd, but game director Vinka has nitpicks with the game even now. He wishes the encounter at the entrance to the Grove in Act 1 wasn't so much of a bottleneck, for example, claiming that they could have continued for years tweaking it. While their future game is sure to present plenty of unseen challenges, the nitpicks and unforeseen hurdles in the past projects will allow Larian to evolve for future ones. BG3 was a game that was at a scale that was new to us, so we learned a lot about dealing with scale. We learned a lot from what we didn't have, and we're trying to have that now so that we do not make the same mistakes. We're in the luxurious position now that we can pick our own destiny and our own path, which is really cool. So I hope that we can sustain that. I have two main goals for the studio, being able to make things that we like to make, and making sure that it's sustainable so we can continue doing so. This philosophy is directly opposed to much of what we see in the current gaming landscape. Between acquisitions, layoffs, crunching, and executives chasing infinite, exponential growth, it's a breath of fresh air to hear about a developer settling for a stable working environment.
Provoke the blade, then suffer its sting.
Baldur's Gate 3 is one of the best games of all time, in large part because of the personal, handcrafted nature evident in its design. 1 year after the game's launch, it's nice to see that the people responsible for that product are excited about what's to come and satisfied with the work that they've done. For more on Baldur's Gate 3, why not check out Devora Wild and Jennifer English, aka Lae'zel and Shadowheart, responding to all those horny comments.